Testing, 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 1, 2, 3. We are in business. All right, let's keep this brief. We live in a Depop society. This isn't about any one particular marketplace per se, or about any particular style that has taken over your nearest metropolitan area. This is about how resale and secondhand have disintermediated the apparel market and what this shift means for how status is conveyed through clothing. What does shopping vintage say about you? Are you a bargain hunter, a multi-decade curator of personal style? Shopping secondhand isn't new. As we'll explore, it has evolved from necessity to a blend of virtue and nostalgia. In the present day, resale has been reborn through screens, curators, and in-person meetups. But of course, nothing is new under the sun. Welcome to our Depop Society. Depop is an online apparel marketplace where shoppers can buy from archivists and resellers, as well as sell their own goods. Today, after only 14 years in operation, Depop has over 43 million customers and facilitates around $800 million in annual sales. The company was founded in 2011 by Anglo-Italian artist and industrial designer Simon Beckerman, who was studying art and industrial design in Milan before dropping out and starting fashion magazine PIG, which stands for People in Groove, in 1998 with his brother. Around 2010, independent magazines were facing the print to digital migration. While magazines under the Condé Nast umbrella, such as GQ and Vogue, were migrating to digital, small independent publishers were facing a problem. The revenue potential for digital was still limited, but the revenue from print was shrinking. During this time, Simon noticed something interesting. The brands, stylists, and archivists that featured in his magazine needed an online presence to be discovered. He also noticed that creatives and stylists meeting in person in Milan to sell unique pieces could use an online platform to be discovered as well. His goal became to speed run the real-life discoverability process by bringing it online and granting the ability to build an audience. At the time, Instagram and Twitter were starting to gain traction, and Simon believed that mobile would be the primary medium for social interaction. As such, Depop launched as a mobile-first blend of an e-commerce platform and a social media profile. Over time, this social layer and the network effects of individual audiences contributed to the company's exponential growth. Still, the growth of Depop is indicative of something much deeper: real-time access to trending pieces through a peer-to-peer network of resellers. This marks the disintermediation of how cool is cultivated. Vintage and secondhand started gaining popularity in the 1960s and 70s in England as English aristocrats began traveling around the empire, collecting flamboyant and practical pieces. At the time, clothing was designed for durability, so this type of vintage shopper was communicating something very specific, that they didn't have to work. Some socialites became icons for their expertise in interior design, importing antiques from around the empire. Instagram accounts such as the Real Housewives of Clapton are modern-day sociological studies of this very practice. The upper classes looking for variety and a splash of plebeian life. While this desire for novelty and variety is one of the driving forces behind secondhand and vintage resale today, it is not the only one. McKinsey and Business of Fashion collaborated on their annual State of Fashion report, which, among other things, outlined how the influence of vintage shopping has impacted the wider market. Due to economic uncertainty, consumers are increasingly prioritizing value, which is driving demand for resale and off-price/dupe shopping. Economic hardship and widespread existentialism have caused many consumers to rethink what really matters. both driving demand for experience shopping in travel, food, and wellness, and driving down trading in apparel markets, causing demand for resale and off-price shopping. As consumers become increasingly cost-conscious, this creates a vacuum for resale, off-price, and dupes to really take hold. Part of the psychology of secondhand is that bargains feel like savings. When we acquire a quality piece at a good price, we feel like we've saved money. A study at Copenhagen Business School found that secondhand shopping functions more as an imperfect substitute for buying new clothes than it does as a replacement. Instead of buying secondhand only, consumers will buy secondhand in addition to new items. Secondhand simply pumps the dopamine flywheel of novelty and variety. In my opinion, there are two underlying trends that will influence how cost-conscious consumption and the preeminence of vintage will evolve. Those are the role of the silver generation and how clothing is discovered in the modern day. Today, about 40% of brand discovery happens through social media, which is only slightly more often than how often it happens through a search engine. So about 80% of the time, brand discovery is digital. This is expected to solidify Depop as one of the most influential platforms for apparel distribution, as it is both digitally native and socially driven. However, there is a catch. Nearly 50% of growth in global spend comes from individuals who are 50 years old or older. In addition to having more wealth, older generations also have vastly different consumption patterns. Older generations are highly brand loyal, whereas Gen Z is the least brand loyal consumer cohort and cares more about trends. As wealth continues to accumulate in the older generations, taste and style will originate there too, giving rise to a more mature, multi-generational style. However, a subset of this trend will be the preeminence of vintage, as younger generations seek access to more timeless looks. The fact that the silver generation cares more about individual style and less about trends means that more original style inspiration is expected to emerge from this demographic, while younger generations continue to cycle the same carousel of trending looks. So what happens when a trend-driven consumer demographic ages into a world with an oversupply of vintage and archival pieces? You get a Depop Society. Algorithmic brand discovery priced at a discount. A dopamine cocktail from start to finish.